team for the last few years. Of course, the Minneapolis Star, and that's Sarah McClellan. Sarah, welcome to the program. And I guess, you know what, that first period was exactly what I thought was going to happen. I expected Buffalo to come out strong, and they did.
They did. They definitely had the better quality of chances, maybe a few odd man rushes. But as he has been lately, Philip Gustafson seems to be tracking everything, and everything's hitting him. Even with rebounds, the Wild are scooping them up. Otherwise, it's sticking to him. So I think the Wild did have some looks, but a lot of pucks were hitting traffic in front. So I'll see if that's something that they can adjust in the second, if there's a way to get pucks through. Obviously, probably a good sign, especially the way things have been going offensively, that they are getting bodies to the net and they're trying to get pucks around there. But there is some room to operate out there. It might take something more flagrant, some type of turnover or mistake to open this up. But, we are seeing both teams kind of go back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of breaks it open potentially in the second.
Yeah, you mentioned Gus also, the goaltender from Minnesota, and how good he has been. He certainly has been. But I mean, you've covered him for a long time. You had a chance to visit with him one-on-one, and the different media scrums and so on. But he seems the guy that's very confident and very well spoken about his game.
Yeah, it was interesting to talk to him recently. About his recent stretch and run of success. Obviously, he comes into this game 5-2-1 in March, near the top of the league since the calendar turned to March, just in terms of statistics and goals against average and save percentage and wins. And you think about a run that he's on, this is actually his career high 6th straight start. And you think a run like that probably takes a toll physically, but actually it's more mental. And if you really think about the focus that it takes, he kind of shared what it's like for him. And imagine, playing a 2.5-hour game and from 7 o'clock, he said, to 9:30 at night, and it feels like you don't blink. Like, that's how he really locks in mentally, is his eyes constantly on the play. He's processing who's on the ice. He actually started to put eye drops in at intermission because his eyes are so dry. And after games, he has a headache. So when you put it in that perspective, yeah, he's been sound. He's been in the right spots. But really how much, he's had to dial in mentally. Even a game like the other night, a 4-0 victory, most of that offense by the Wild in the first period, but he still rattled off 34 saves for a shutout. And so a run like this, yeah, you think, he's playing a lot of games. It's got to be physically taxing, but it's just as much, I think, mentally how he's been able to stay sharp. And that's a credit to him. He's seeing pucks well. But obviously that takes a lot of focus. And I think we're seeing that now, too, even in the first period. Probably the best save, of the game so far was that pad save on the Tage Thompson deke. He's seeing pucks, he's reacting well, and that's obviously the type of goaltending the Wild need.
And the thing is, with him and Marc-Andre Fleury, it's a good combination. You've got a guy that's been around the league for a long, long time, and the likes of Flower, and then you've got the youngster. I call him a youngster because he hadn't been around a great deal of time yet, but those two guys seem to have a good rapport as well, and you want that within your squad, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think, this has been a lot of practice days, obviously, for Marc-Andre Fleury, just to try to stay sharp for himself physically with Gustafson playing 6 in a row now. Obviously, there's a back-to-back coming up, so that would lead you to believe that, Fleury will finally get in one of those games Monday or Tuesday. But, he acknowledged, too, I talked to him recently that, Gustafson has been playing amazing. He cheers for him. The team's doing well, so I think he understands that. But you're right. I think there is a rapport there, too, that they have. Another thing, talking about the mental focus that it takes, for Gustafson to play, and be as locked in as he has. Part of that is his conversations with Fleury in game. They will go through the alphabet and they will, go A to Z and try to think of a car or a country for each letter. Like, they're communicating in game at intermission, and it's not all just hockey talk.
Right.
So that really, I think, speaks to the partnership that they've obviously been able to create the years they've been together here.
Yeah, he couldn't figure out an animal that started with the letter X.
X is a very difficult one, you're right.
At least he's near the end of it, that's for sure. The other guy I want to talk about is Brodin. Having him back in the lineup, what does he bring to the table for this team?
Yeah, I think just the poise, the calming factor that he's back there, and I think that experience obviously is key, but just the way that he can help transition pucks for this team. So much has been made about the offense lately, but a lot of it obviously does start in their own end and how much stress they're putting on their defense and how quickly they're able to alleviate pressure and go the other way. And I think he's a big catalyst for that in their transition game, getting out of tight spots, squeezing out of jams, and just enabling them to get on offense and get through the neutral zone and put pressure at the other end. So I'd expect we'd start to see that as he kind of gets back into this groove. And that's obviously a key return for the team. You know, when you look back at kind of, the start of their season was so tremendous. There's a little dip in the middle, and it kind of coincided when he started getting hurt, missing games. I think that just speaks to how much of a stabilizing presence he is back there, not just defensively, but like I said, to help them get to the other end of the rink and create offense.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've said this time and time again, looking at Minnesota this year, it's not the number of injuries they've had, it's the quality of the player that have been injured, and that's evident once again here today.
Yeah, and the length of absence, right?
Yep.
Like, you look how long these players have been out. It hasn't just been necessarily 1 or 2 games. It's been weeks at a time, months at a time, and that does put a strain on them. But, they do seem to find a way. Even as grim as maybe the last few weeks felt, this is a team that's still been comfortably in a playoff position. They've found a way to kind of weather this adversity, and I think that's now kind of probably ingrained in this team's DNA as much as the strong start or, the players who had bounce-back seasons. When you think of really the hallmarks of this season, I think that's got to be part of it too, is that the way that, they've been able to stay competitive. Obviously, we're seeing that the standings are still very much indicative of their strong start and a team that was, atop the NHL in mid-December. But still, they've been able to, maintain enough of a pace despite these hefty absences to still be in a comfortable playoff position.
Yeah, and I look at players this year. There's only 3 players that have played every game this year for Minnesota. Of course, that's being Boldy's one of them. Of course, you got Rossi, who was also number 1 last year. He was a rookie last year. He and number 7, obviously, were the 2 guys that played every game last year. And then, of course, you got Gaudreau playing every game this year. But when you get in the playoff competition, it's much more stressful, much more physical also.
Yeah, we'll probably see a big preview of that. Looking at the schedule, the teams they have left to play against. Just look at next week. Dallas, Vegas, which is a potential first-round preview, and then Washington. So, as tough as the schedule is, I would look at it as this is probably a good measuring stick to see, the type of competition they're going to see come playoffs. But, yeah, just the margin for error in these types of games. We saw it when the offense was struggling. That was, self-induced, self-inflicted margin for error just because there wasn't, obviously very many goals being scored. But the competitiveness, those are teams at the top of their games that are obviously in good playoff positioning as well. So I would see that that's probably a pretty good challenge for the team to kind of gauge its readiness as is, still missing some key players. But just to get a good read on where they're at, a little less than a month to go in the regular season.
Yeah. Sarah, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Sarah McClellan, our guest here. Kevin, let's go back to you.
All right, thank you, Sarah, for joining us in the intermission. You will get a gift certificate down to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. After 1 period of play, the Wild and Sabres are scoreless. We'll break. We'll give you a full recap of the first 20 minutes. This is Wild Hockey presented by XL Energy.